12 Portugal on Oakland Avenue. This September. Got a couple of young kids. He's on the business improvement district board right now. So, yeah. So he's one. I don't know who else is.
Good afternoon. I'd like to call this village board meeting to order. It is 7:48. All trustees are present. Has this meeting been publicly noticed? And just a reminder, there are sign-up sheets outside if you'd like to speak in the meeting as a resident, and also to put your microphones close to you when you speak. Thank you. Our first item up on the agenda is a special order of business. A presentation of a combined sewer service area green infrastructure plan by Nadia Drake, the senior project planner. Hi.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Good. How are you guys? Just good?
Yes.
Super. So thank you so much for inviting me to participate in your meeting. I'm really excited to give you guys an overview of hopefully an upcoming opportunity. The project that I'm going to present on today is really a mixture of two projects and opportunities dovetailing together. And so I'm going to give an overview of Project 1 and then Project 2, and then talk about an opportunity to do some really cool green infrastructure in the village, just next to Harry's Bar and Grill on Oakland and Edgewood. Please feel free to stop me in the middle and ask questions. My contact information is on the bottom there, both email and phone, so if you do have follow-up questions, please don't hesitate to ask. So first, if people are not aware, I know the village is really progressive, which is fantastic. Just a quick green infrastructure overview. So green infrastructure, which you'll be seeing GI noted in the presentation, are systems that mimic nature. So green infrastructure are built systems that soak in rainwater and stormwater and let it infiltrate into the ground naturally, preventing it from going into the pipes and the sewer systems below. So green infrastructure helps protect our rivers, particularly the Milwaukee River right here, and Lake Michigan, because it will help clean dirty water before it gets into the rivers and lakes. It helps reduce flooding in areas when it's properly put in, to make sure that that water soaks in before it can flood streets. At the bottom you see a couple of pictures of green infrastructure. To the left is a high-performance bioswale. This bioswale is being piloted with the city of Milwaukee right now. It can infiltrate 100 inches an hour of rain and has about 10% of the footprint of what the regular green infrastructure can have. Some permeable pavers are in the middle there. This is a way that you can still maintain the functionality of urban spaces by putting in permeable pavers that allow water to soak through the cracks and then get stored underneath a basin.
Where are they? Can you say where those are?
Yep, those are on Greenfield Avenue, down Freshwater Way. And then the bioswale, the high-performance bioswale is on Milwaukee's south side near Pulaski Park on Wind Lake Avenue. And then your own green infrastructure. So Shorewood has a lot of really great green infrastructure. Your green infrastructure just up here off of Capitol is a little bit more structured. You have your green infrastructure, the newer green infrastructure that went in along Wilson, which is shown in the last picture to the right. So Shorewood already does great green infrastructure. And this project that I've been working on with Leanne is really looking to site green infrastructure in both the city and the village of Shorewood in a proactive way. So the project itself, Project 1 if you will, is to identify up to 10 sites in the combined sewer service area. And for those who are unfamiliar with what that area is, the combined sewer service area is a percentage of the city of Milwaukee and village of Shorewood, where anytime it rains, you take a shower, you flush the toilet, you do dishes, all of that water goes into one pipe. And because you have the same water that's coming from your homes or businesses and coming from your street going into that pipe, what happens is that pipe can get full of water and inundated really, really fast. And so what we're looking to do is identify 10 really key priority sites in both the city of Milwaukee and village of Shorewood in this specific area, this combined sewer service area, to proactively create conceptual plans for green infrastructure. So instead of doing it on a, typically what the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewage District does. I'm sorry, would anyone like a quick overview of the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewage District? Okay, so typically the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewage District and oftentimes many municipalities that we work with do green infrastructure on an opportunistic basis. We want to switch that paradigm with this process, and we want to do it on a targeted basis, saying we have this criteria, we know we have this problem, let's identify these sites beforehand, and then as capital investment projects come up, as new opportunities come up, then we'll site the projects there. So this is an 18-month planning project that started this January. It's going to be done mid-next year, and what the result will be is a report that identifies up to 10 different sites in both the village of Shorewood and the city of Milwaukee that have conceptual plans for green infrastructure. That's what we're referring to as phase 1. Phase 2 would be MMSD and partners working together to identify funding opportunities to move those conceptual designs into actual construction projects. And that could look like a lot of different pots of money coming together, and that's something that we'll work through in this process. But part of the planning project process, we will be going to the EPA and inviting them to come up for site visits so we can start bringing some more federal funders in. So our partners for this work include the Village of Shorewood, the City of Milwaukee, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and then the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewage District. So as we started developing this project, first we had to establish criteria for where these green infrastructure locations could be. So on the screen you see a couple of the criteria that the team decided on. One, we wanted the space to be over 0.5 acres. If we're going to make this proactive investment, we want to make sure it's impactful. We want big spaces. We want to maximize runoff from impervious or concrete surfaces. So we want to not only just look at the footprint of the project, but say, can we pull water from concrete surfaces from other places into this space as well? We want to look at areas that have existing problems with water. That could be on-street flooding, that could be basement backups. But we know that green infrastructure can help, so we want to look at spaces that already have issues with water. We did not want to deal with a contaminated property. And for this project, what we are defining as a contaminated property is a brownfield. And so we said, you know what, that's really difficult. We don't want to deal with brownfields. We want to make sure that the property is owned by the municipality. For this level, we could work with private property, but working with the municipality, it's easier to match up objectives and shared goals. And then we wanted to be conscious about potentially integrating a green infrastructure project into a planned investment. So if you're already, and you being a broad you, if you're already going to be ripping up a street or redoing a parking lot or looking at retrofitting an area, how can we just do an add-on to that rather than a whole independent project? So those are our criteria. Next, we mapped all of the properties, and through a mapping exercise that was very robust, we are in the process of identifying up to 10 priority parcels. So today, we had a meeting to continue to narrow that down. So this is the whole project approach. Next, after we have those narrow properties down, we'll develop conceptual green infrastructure plans for priority parcels. Those conceptual plans will include not only the criteria that have been identified here, but we'll look at saying how much water is actually entering, how much peak flow, which means how much maximum water are we reducing out of the sewer system to prevent a combined sewer overflow into Lake Michigan, into the Milwaukee River. We'll create a report, and then that report will be used as a basis to obtain some additional funding from external partners. And so by mid-July, we'll be looking to go back out and start trying to think about it. Yeah?
I'm just wondering if, so it says you're going to pick the sites and then you're going to go straight to development of GIS plans, but these are all in the village of Shorewood, correct?
No, it's a mix between Village of Shorewood and the City of Milwaukee.
Okay. Is there a chance that the board can vote on the sites you've selected before moving it into GIS planning?
Sure, that's a great question. Today is kind of a yes, kind of.
Okay.
So I'll get into it more. So the question is, can you vote on the site? So based on the criteria that were identified, Shorewood has very limited sites. So we have picked one site for Shorewood, and that's the site I want to talk to you about today. Okay. However, what I'm proposing is that the City of Milwaukee is going to get these conceptual designs. You have a huge investment that's coming in with MMSD for another project. And so what I'd like to propose is that MMSD actually speed track and move you guys from conceptual design through like actual construction. So that's what do you like that one or no? I don't know if you like that. So what I'd like to propose is kind of that process and why we think that'll work. So is this recorded? You're gonna get a lot of bang for your buck if you vote yes, I think. What you would have the opportunity to do, so today I'm not asking for a formal vote. What I would be asking you guys at the end of the presentation is if you all agree that it's okay for us to move forward with conceptual planning. We would come back, and I'll show you this in the timeline a little bit later on, to say, here are 3 options that we think would work in this space, and that's what we would present to you more formally. And say, do you like these options? What do you think? What would you vote on? Does that make sense?
Is that okay to give direction at the end of the meeting without it being?
It is, we have listed it as a consideration to
Okay.
take it to that next step,
Okay.
which is conceptual, which I think would be beneficial for both parties.
Excellent.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Good question. Other questions? Yes, sir.
Are you speaking with the school district too, that's going to be redoing its properties?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, Leanne, remind me of the school across from City Market. I'm sorry. Atwood. Yep. So Atwood was one of the considerations early on for a potential green infrastructure site.
Oh, just talk to Lottie, not to her.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Atwood was a consideration early on, so we did for Shorewood include all of your school properties. And we looked, and Atwood, with the criteria, didn't quite fit. We have beautiful mature trees along all the edges, and so we would never want to try to move water from a street into Atwood as a school, or excuse me, Atwater. And along Capitol, you do have really nice green infrastructure that's managing that water along the street. So that, the schools were considered, but that property came out. And I actually have a map, and I can show you which properties we looked at. And certainly, if you'd like us to look at another property that's on the map, we'd be happy to do that, or I'd be happy to give you kind of a report out on what we found. So these are the potential Shorewood parcels. The parcels in the purple delineation, that means it's in the combined sewer service area. So that's the area that we're focusing on. The parcels in red and orange, so the parcels in red mean that they're parcels greater than 1 acre, so that means that first criteria. The parcels in orange mean that it's greater than 0.5 acres. You see some green, they look kind of like crosses on the map. Those are areas that Shorewood's identified as a known problem with water. And then you see a lot of lines with different colors in the bottom right hand of the map. Those are proposed sewer improvements. So we wanted to put those on there because, again, looking at if you're going to be ripping up a street, if MMSC is going to be working with you, how can we leverage a capital improvement? So when we looked at the map in the combined sewer service area, you see that there are pretty limited options, right? We don't want to mess with green space. We've got Atwater School, we've got the village parking lot here for the village of Shorewood, and where you see the star in the bottom left, that's on the corner of Edgewood and Oakland. And so we started looking at that saying, well, that's a pretty good project site. So this was
What's that big, oh, is that the high school, the big red
to the left.
to the left, yeah, that's the high school.
I believe so.
Yeah, that
Yep.
is.
So that's Atwater Park over on the lake, and then the wilderness area, whatever it's called.
Nature
area.
preserve?
Nature
Yep.
preserve, oh,
So those are out.
those are all out.
Well, because it's a park and a wilderness preserve, we wouldn't want to, they're already soaking in the rainwater.
So the orange ones are the only ones that are in?
The orange ones and Atwater, which is just above, were the ones that were considered.
Atwater Park.
Is that Atwater Park or Atwater School?
School.
That's, the park is.
School park.
Yes, Atwater, thank you, Atwater School was considered, correct.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Does this map, do these colors distinguish between those that were considered and rejected and those that are still being considered?
This map looks at everything. So this does not have any delineation of we took something off or we put something on or a consideration. This map is essentially showing what these bulleted point criterias are. So we're just showing where's an area that has a problem with water. The places with the green crosses. Where's an area that's over 0.5 acres? 0.5 acres is orange, 1 acre is red. So we're just mapping the these criteria that only properties owned by municipalities, and we didn't include schools in that. That's what these ones are. Does that make sense? So this is kind of your full scope of what the opportunities could be.
I mean, the Lake Bluff should probably be on there too, the Lake Bluff School. I'm sure they're at least half an acre, but whatever.
It's not a mixed use.
So it has to be in the purple,
Oh,
because it's the combined sewer is the focus, so that it was one of the criteria which also
Is high school.
narrows it down.
Trustee Mentor, did you say is the high school in combined sewer?
what?
High school?
The high school is,
But technically, its sewer connections are into the combined.
so if we didn't look at the high school per se, the high school likely has internal drainage, which means that anything that's falling on the roof is going to go down into the combined sewer through pipes through the middle of the school versus an external drainage system. So it's very difficult. Putting a green infrastructure strategy on top of the roof, like a green roof, which is just plants that would soak in the water, would likely be very difficult as well. Structurally, older buildings, it's very difficult to put green roofs on without very expensive retrofits to make sure that they can structurally hold the capacity and weight for a green roof. We didn't look at those things in detail, but typically, that's why we wouldn't have had Shorewood High School or the middle school on. The green space around the school is all managing the direct water and runoff, and then there's green infrastructure up and down Capitol. And then along the school's boundary on Oakland. Does that make sense?
No, but keep going.
No, I'm happy to clarify. Help me understand what I can give more information or say in a different way.
I mean, so you're saying the high school, it's all coming internally and going into drains and going into the combined sewer.
Correct.
And so even though there's a lot of green space there, you didn't consider it. But I mean, couldn't we change the drainage and put green infrastructure somewhere there?
Yes, you could. It would
Well,
cost,
we can't because we don't own the property.
it would cost, your return on investment for a strategy like that would not be worth it. Because you would have to literally change like the internal structure of the school, to like pull the pipes out.
So Atwater is different.
Atwater is not different. What we would be looking for Atwater would be taking,
Well, I used the Atwater school.
Yep.
I'm sorry.
Atwater School, we would be looking to take the rain coming from the adjacent streets and the concrete like playground area and putting it into a system that soaked up water. So the adjacent streets wouldn't work for this because when we did an assessment, you've got beautiful mature trees. You never want to mess with tree roots because they're already soaking up really good water. But to try to move water from a street onto a different space, you'd have to cut through the tree roots. And so we would never want to mess with those trees unless it was necessary. The topography, which just means how high and low things are as well. The topography along one great side of Atwater School. The school itself is higher than the road, and so it would be very difficult to move water from the road up.
Paul, did you have a question?
No, just a point about the high school. The western half of the high school property drains, the stormwater drains to a retention system that is under the football field that was paid for by village referendum. The parking lot, which is, aside from the roofs, the largest piece of impermeable pavement, most of that, or more than half of that drains to a district-funded green infrastructure along the swales on the northern edge, southern edge of the parking lot. And the district did, a number of years ago, look at green roofs, and we're pretty limited in terms of the buildings that would support them without, like you said, significant improvements.
Thank you.
So after narrowing this down for the village of Shorewood, we said, well, there's this parking lot series next to Harry's essentially, on the corner of Edgewood and Oakland, that looks like it could have some potential. So this is a zoom in of that space. So first we said, okay, well, these 3 parking lots that you see here, so 1, 2, and 3, they're all owned by the village, so that's great. There is a huge opportunity to take lots of runoff, which just means rain that's falling from other places, including potentially on Oakland Avenue here, and move it into these spaces. So you want to create, hypothetically, at a very simple level, like one project that you can put a lot of water into. So you want to be able to move water into it. So we were looking and saying, okay, well, this is a good idea. You see the hashed marks in different colors around here. The hashed marks around each of these parking lots is indicating that it's already green space, so it's already lawn. The solid colors here are indicating that it is concrete or pavement. So we want to take the water and rain that's falling on the pavement and put it into green space. That would be the idea. It's very visible to the public. It's got great use with the baseball diamond here. And what we learned, and that's what I'm here to talk to you guys about today, is there's an opportunity to combine this idea with money that's already going into the ground. And that does not always happen, and it makes projects better, and hypothetically it makes overall project costs cheaper. Because you don't have to do 2 different projects at once, you just adjust one project. So we were looking at this site saying, yeah, this is a good site, and then we said, oh, there's a really good project going on right down Edgewood. Let's explore that a little. So this project down Edgewood, this is not my project. So you're going to have a different group of both MMSD staff and engineers come and present to you based on this schedule. So this project is called the Edgewood NSC project. I don't know if you guys have heard about this yet at all. What this is going to do is it's going to increase the capacity of the combined sewer system along Edgewood to convey wet weather flows to MMSD facilities and reduce basement backups in the village of Shorewood. What that means is a really big pipe deep in the ground. So that when the flooding that happened in 2010, hopefully we can, I'm not an engineer, so the big pipe in the ground, that's
The deep tunnel.
the deep tunnel.
Your deep tunnel.
So that's because we know that there was a problem in that intersection. So this project is to build a really, really big pipe deep in the ground to take extra water that dumps in there. So this project is going to cost $8 to $10 million. The partners are MMSD, Village of Shorewood, City of Milwaukee. The general time frame for this is a construction start, looking at the first quarter of 2021, with the project being complete in 2022. As I mentioned, this is not my project, so this project team is going to come and formally present to you. I think that tentatively they're looking at March 2020, and then starting public outreach in April 2020. So why would a big pipe project and a parking lot green infrastructure project be related? I'll tell you at the last bullet. I jumped ahead. So this near surface collector project is going to improve the connections and how all these systems interconnect between Shorewood's pipes and MMSD's pipes. It's going to be approximately 2,000 feet of a 72-inch diameter pipe that runs down the length of Shorewood. And why this is an opportunity is because when you go back to this, oops, excuse me. Okay, so why this is an opportunity is where this star is, again, is those 3 parking lots. MMSD is proposing using one of the parking lots to stage the construction. So one of the parking lots we're proposing saying, we need to keep material there and we need to dig a really big hole in that parking lot so we can dig a really big tunnel. So you see that that's why these 2 projects are intersecting. MMSD already wants to rip up the parking lot, and now I'm coming in as still MMSD saying, well, we could put the parking lot back the same way, or we could do a really cool green infrastructure project. So the opportunity is after MMSD is done staging construction, because it will be substantial in that parking lot, we would need to repair the parking lot. But why would you want to repair it to previous conditions? Just pave it over. When you could do something like adding green infrastructure. It's cheaper to add it right away versus to go in 2 years later and add it. And MMSD is going to worked to get that paid for by MMSD, just that parking lot. So what it looks like, these are examples from Mitchell Street Library on Milwaukee's south side. So this was a parking lot that was done, this is a aerial of the parking lot before. So you can see it's a regular parking lot, lots of parking spaces, very little green space. The City of Milwaukee Parking said, oh, well, we want to redo the parking lot, but we want to add green infrastructure. So what we did in this parking lot was we put in bioswales, which are just depressions that can hold water and pool it and let it soak in the ground naturally. We put in some nice boardwalks, and this is the after. So we could repave it all black, or we could do something cool like this. The cool like this is where the project options would come in. Yeah.
So the parking lot that we're discussing, we sell, and I don't know exactly which is which, but we do sell permits for residents to park in and some parking limitations in the community, as well as use that for snow in the winter.
Yes.
So I guess my question here is how many spaces did they lose and how much space in unusable space, because I'm assuming that you need to keep those bioswales. We can't dump all of our snow there.
That's a really great question. And so we've been working closely with Leanne to come up with what are some of these make or break things. And so she said, hey, we're storing snow there. That's going to change what feature you can put in. So that is one of the things is we must be able to continue with the project. You must be able to continue to store a lot of snow there and what that looks like. Because you're right, you wouldn't want to dump snow into these areas necessarily. So right now, we're at the idea stage of like, here's the idea. The next step would be presenting options to you that would take into consideration those things. For this particular parking lot, we actually gained spaces. Because the way that the parking lot was set up right in the beginning was horizontal. And after the project, you can kind of see here, we actually put in vertical spaces here. So the City of Milwaukee actually gained a couple of spots here. But that would be something, Leanne's given us some guidance on criteria. The next time we come and present, I will not be here because I'm going to have a baby. So my boss, Karen Sands, will be in part presenting, likely in January, to both the Parks Committee and you all, and laying out, here are 3 options. So those are things that we'll take into consideration now, but also really good things to say, hey, we want to make sure that this parking spots are maintained, we sell these parking spots, and that can take in snow.
Right.
Both really good points.
I mean, to put the snow there, had to lose some parking spaces already. So,
Sure.
I just think that that's something that we have to be really cognizant of as we're sort of discussing the project.
So this is a different snow scale storage, I'm guessing. For this project, the City of Milwaukee also stores snow here. They do not store snow from like the city of Milwaukee at large, right? From a smaller geography. But for this parking lot, what we did, and we don't have pictures here, but I'd be happy to send it to you, or I can pull it up on my phone. So for this parking lot here, we did fancy things like this, but then in this corner, about that space right here, is what we left for snow storage. And what we did there is rather than have, this is something with plants that you would have, so we put what are called permeable pavers, so they just look like pavers that allow the snow to soak in and then sit underground. And then eventually the snow in this parking lot drains into a green space using pipes underground. So yours would be different. One of the biggest considerations when you do a permeable paver or something like that is the size of the truck swing on it. So thinking about the size of the machines that you would be having moving, like these front end loaders, we would be really cognizant of that because they would just tear it up. So, great questions.
Thank you.
Other questions? All right, so this is the opportunity, is MMSD would like to use that parking lot for this other big tunnel project. Instead of putting it back to concrete, we could do something like this. And that's where these 2 projects really are dovetailing for this opportunity. So the idea would be to design green infrastructure for the parking lot that would take as much road runoff from the adjacent parking lots and maybe Oakland Avenue. So you want to move the water from these spaces into that single parking lot. We want to help rain soak in the ground naturally. We want to keep it out of that sewer system by letting it soak in naturally. Excuse me. And we want to help reduce on-street flooding during heavy storms. This green infrastructure parking lot is not going to solve flooding. Neither will the NSC project. But what it will do is in smaller storms, it'll help manage water naturally before putting it into pipes. So this is kind of your small storm idea before you get to the big pipes. So the idea right now is that MMSD will pay for the design and construction of the green infrastructure in just that parking lot. We still need to figure out costs associated with if we're going to move water into that space, what that would look like, and that would be all done over the course of the next year. But MMSD is going to have to redo it anyway. We can pay for the design. So to your point of asking where, if you could have options of where it is, not really. However, other people aren't getting this part because you have such an opportunity. And so what MMSD would like to commit to do is spend money on the design and the construction of this. So you don't have an opportunity to choose the space, but the other locations in the top 10 will not get any of this. So the next steps would be tonight, presenting this idea to you all. It would be great to get consent to move forward, again, just with the idea as, okay, we'd like to move into conceptual planning for this. January 14th, Karen Sands will come back with our engineering team. She'll present up to 3 different green infrastructure options to you all. What those would look like is not only how much water these places could soak up, but what that might look like, where they might be sited. Yeah.
It's with Parks Committee, so we're not talking about the actual Parks Committee, are we? If she means the village board or?
So we can switch this if it makes sense. What we thought is that we'd go to the Parks Committee first to present the preferred option, and then January 21st we would come and present and say the Parks Committee has decided, or the Parks Committee has said, this is the preferred option. We would still present all 3 options to you all.
Like a recommendation.
Oh, okay.
The Parks
Yeah, that's different
recommendation.
because we don't have an actual Parks Committee within the board.
It's the Parks Commission.
Yeah.
Sorry, excuse me, the Parks Commission. Yep, so we would present to the Parks Commission first and say, here are the 3 options.
I will have viewing, like you said, the same 3 options.
Correct. And we would just say, you know, here are some comments that the Parks Commission
That makes a
said.
lot of sense, okay.
Sorry, yep, good clarification, sorry about that.
That's my question. So are we talking about something right adjacent to, like it that you showed at the Milwaukee site, or are we talking probably in the park somewhere?
So at this point, it would be within the footprint of the parking lot.
Okay.
So for this, the options would not be going into the baseball field. It might be using other parts of the parking lot or that green space that exists and shifting that green space around the parking lot, but it would not be going into the baseball field itself in the actual park.
There's we put in a swale on the south end to get the flooding water through the park and out to the ditch there, so that would still be functioning, or you would?
Yep, absolutely. So we wouldn't want to mess with any existing infrastructure. After we picked the preferred option, we would make sure that this project was integrated with any of the existing projects that you have. Yep, great question.
Quick question as well. Maybe I just missed this, but are we talking, we're just one parking lot or all 3 parking lots in the area?
A great question. Oops, excuse me. So what it would likely be is 2 phases. And this is something we're still working on. So the pink parking lot here is what MMSD is going to use for the big construction for the pipe project. So this is the parking lot that MMSD would redo. What we would be looking to do is say, let's just say 10 units of water are on this parking lot, okay? So instead of us saying, we're gonna design the green infrastructure to capture 10 units of water, what we are looking to do is say, but if there's 10 units of water here, here, and here, I actually want to design this parking lot to take in 40 units of water. So that at phase 2, when we go out for potential federal funding or a mix of funding, and again, we don't know what that would look like, this parking lot would be ready so that we could move water to it really fast and it could soak it up. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
So the footprint of the parking lot for this project is, what can we do here? But instead of saying, we're just gonna look at it to soak in 10 units of water, I want to design it to soak in 40 units of water so that eventually all of that can be put here. How it gets put there is a part of this process, but won't be funded for construction. Does that help answer that?
Thank you. Yes.
Okay. So,
To do all 40 units, does that mean like half the parking is gonna be gone? I mean,
no, because what we would do is we would be working with Shorewood to say, what are your criteria? So you can do green infrastructure in a lot of different ways. What the options that will be presented to you are what those ways look like. But unless you say, yep, we can lose a total of 6 parking spots in all 3. If you say that, I'd love to have those 6 parking spots. If you tell me no, we'll design it differently. So you can do different strategies. My thought that I really like, it's I think probably the most cost effective, but we'll see if it works based on how the road slope, is something called a trench drain. So it's essentially like it depends how big it is based on how much water is going in, but maybe like a 2-foot wide, 1 foot deep concrete channel that goes into the ground that has a metal grate over the top that just moves water and flows it somewhere. So that would be the easiest thing, would be probably to put in these trenches. They're all ADA accessible, it wouldn't mess with that, you wouldn't lose any parking. They wouldn't be pretty and sparkly, but they could cut across the parking lot to move water and move those units into there. Does that make sense?
I have a feeling you have this all in your head, like you know what you think it's gonna be, look like.
No.
Just not telling us.
No, I don't.
Okay.
Because I'm not the engineer.
Okay.
What I've thought about is, I've thought about this project for 2 years and longer. So what's in my head is, how do you most cost effectively move water into a place where MMSD can pay for it? Whether or not that works is,
What? Not paying for it.
I don't know if it's gonna work, right? But that's my idea. So when you say it's all in your head, my idea is, how can I work with my financial structure to get us to maximize paying for it, right? So that's why I'm saying a trench drain, because the linear foot cost for a trench drain is much, much lower than anything else. The maintenance for those, almost nothing. So we could think of a project that costs, I have a lot of other ideas that are sparkly and expensive, but we could think of a project that could be sparkly and expensive. Look at Tom, look at me. We could think of a project that would be sparkly and expensive, and it would cost the village a ton in maintenance, because you'd have to get people out there to do maintenance. This concept, and it's just a concept, very low maintenance. You don't have to take care of trench drains. Maybe once a year you have to hold them out with leaves. So it's just a very cost-effective way to move a ton of water into a space. And if I can only pay for this space with this project, I want to maximize how much water I can put there versus have like piddlywinks investments. Does that make sense? So it is in my head, because I've been thinking about how to do a project for multiple years. However, what you'll see January 21st, and what the Parks Commission will see January 14th, is they're going to present, here are 3 ideas. Here's the amount of water that can happen with those 3 ideas. Here's what it might look like on the surface with those 3 ideas. I don't know if at that point we will be able to say it's going to cost this specific amount, but we will be able to say this is low, medium, and high cost to those 3 options. And then that's where we really want your feedback. Because if doing these 2 projects becomes a cost share with maybe your green solutions money and I write a grant to the EPA, you might not want the fancy sparkly pretty stuff, you might want a trench drain that is the most cost-effective option. But that's why we want to present it to you and get your feedback. And there's feedback within each of those options, right? You could say, I really like this, but that part, can we look at changing it? Does that make sense? And does that answer your question, sir?
Yes.
Okay. So really tonight, what I would be looking for is agreement from you all to say, yep, we can conceptually move forward with designing this and going into these options because that costs us money, right? So would you guys be okay with me saying, yes, engineers, we want you to start designing these 3 options and ideas and then come back and present? And that's what tonight would be. And then, like I said, in March, about March, the other part of the team with the pipe project, they'll come back and be able to answer the questions that you have about that specific project. So this is just a conceptual design for the green infrastructure for that.
Anybody have any questions?
Mayor, up for consideration of the agenda. No.
There's a suggested motion that's in the packet that requires consideration of moving forward with the village's participation in MMSD's combined sewer service area green infrastructure projects for the inclusion of the River Park parking lot areas in the GI alternatives analysis, which would include an anticipated timeline of presentation of those alternatives to the Shorewood Park Committee for review on January 14th, and for the village board's consideration on January 21st for selection of design alternatives. Should the board so choose.
So do we have any questions? Ms. Marcus?
Well, so we are allowed to make a motion even though this is just presentation and not agenda size for consideration.
I don't see any issue with it. Here's why. The village is not actually expending any funds or exercising any authority. It's just giving direction to another agency that's going to come back, that's going to expend funds to develop a potential, do some engineering on potential plans, and then bring them back at another date for the village to take formal action on, at which time you can be a vote on the project, rejecting or accepting the project. So you're really just giving direction to another agency as to whether or not.
Okay, then so moved.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Trustee Matto.
I have a question of how this relates to our, what we need to do with the
TMDLs?
Yeah,
Great question.
yeah.
It
I
doesn't.
mean, I see that this helps, it doesn't? Oh.
It's a good question. And I love that you guys know what TMDLs are.
I didn't know if it was TDML or TMDL, I knew it was one.
The T pollutants.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, why this project won't help. So in the combined sewer, that purple area that we showed you on the map, what the objective is anywhere in the combined sewer is quantity. So you want to keep water out of those pipes. So this project is looking at quantity capture. In the separate sewer area, which is that line where you had picked up where Shorewood High School is, the separate sewer area, you want to look at quality. So water quality means pollution that's coming off of your streets, your lawns, your roadways. The water quality is the same thing as a TMDL, a total maximum daily load with pollution. So the TMDL, or the pollution component, only applies in the separate sewer area. Because that, when it rains, half that water comes to us when you flush your toilet, but then the rainwater actually goes into the rivers and lakes. And so that's the rainwater we want to clean before it goes into the river and lake.
Any further questions? If not, we had a motion, correct? No. Did you have a motion?
I just wanted to say thank you for being one of the most refreshing parts of my day.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
All day, I've focused on things, and operationally, really, this is the long-term planning of this village, and so your enthusiasm was quite refreshing for me.
Thank you, I appreciate
So,
that.
thank you.
Thank you. Like I said, I've been thinking about this. I think it's a great project. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd also like to say this is great. It's been long in the making, and Paul Zobuk over here, who worked on the high school parking lot, this is great to see this continuation and extension. And when, over 10 years ago, we were talking about this in the Conservation Committee. So you're coming to us saying that you're gonna pay for the bulk of it potentially, or,
Yeah.
but it's great.
Well, we really appreciate the partnership and being open,
Yeah.
because this is a different way to do a project, so we really appreciate the partnership and allowing us to move forward at least with the conceptual design.
That's a big issue in this village as well, not just the environmental aspects, but the fact that we do have a lot of water.
Yeah.
to deal with.
There is.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you. And I know it's a couple of folks here brought up some of the criteria about like losing parking spaces. My phone number and email is in the front of the presentation. In the next 2 weeks, because of my time shortness, if you have any criteria that you want us to be aware of, like make sure that it has to take snow removal, right? Or we would prefer it not taking up the baseball field, things like that. Please feel free to email me any of those, so that as we're putting them into the design, we're aware. Leanne's been great about communicating these baseline criteria, so I was familiar with those. If there's other criteria though that you guys have that you want to make sure that we consider, please don't hesitate to email me and I'll pass it along to the engineer to put into the options.
Excellent. Good one, yeah.
Thank you. On the project? Or both projects?
Your favorite.
This may be already a tree hugger. We did that, but thank you. Yeah, so I will be back in the beginning of April, and then I anticipate working with the full project team, including the Edgewood team, to help support the public outreach component. I think that talking about really big pipes in the ground, sometimes you lose your audience. So, not always, we like them, but I'll be working with that group as well to help design strategic public outreach to make sure that folks understand and have feedback into what that project looks like. So, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Now we do have a vote.
Take a vote.
Oh,
And a motion and a second, I don't have a vote.
sorry.
So motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing the results. There's some preferences or choices.
Thank you.
Our next agenda item for tonight is consent agenda. Items. Items under consent agenda may be acted upon by one motion. If an instruction of the village board member, consent agenda items needs more discussion, the item can be placed on the items removed from the consent agenda. Is any, a motion to approve this consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, motion by trustee Maher, second by trustee Warren. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oh, you have to say remove first? Yep. Oh, we'll scratch that.
I was just gonna make a request to remove, or request of the board to remove item 5G. The Public Art Committee had bids that were due here for the film and signal boxes last Thursday at 3 o'clock. Apparently this morning I was informed that they received one on Friday, and so they'd like to have an opportunity to review that. So I would recommend deferring until they have that opportunity into your January 21st meeting.
Okay, so I'll remove item 2.
Okay, so just records to remove item G. Any other removals? I have, I don't know which one it is, so I'm going to remove both B and C. Just the minutes. Anybody else? No other removals? We will now take a vote. Is that correct?
To approve the consent agenda,